Good evening, friends. I welcome you all to this session, End-to-End Security in Cloud and Data Storage, Myths and Realities. Friends, this session is going to be chaired by Mr. Praveen Prashant, who is the editor, Teleanalysis. Can I request Mr. Prashant to please come on the dais? The other panelists are Mr. Neeraj Mediratta, CEO, ACE Data Devices. Please come, sir. Mr. Ambrish Gupta, CEO and founder, Nolarity Communications. Mr. Ganesh Sankaran, co-founder and CEO, Prime Focus Technologies. Mr. Steve Christian, VP of Marketing, Very Matrix. Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, Managing Director, Albin Infotel Private Limited. Mr. Prashant, you can take over the session now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. We have got a very diverse panel here. Neeraj comes from the cloud storage part. We have Ganesh, who comes from media ERP part. Ambrish comes from business telephony. And Sanjeev comes from IT solutions company. And Steve comes more from content protection. And the tagline we say is content protection, protecting to revenue security. We have a very interesting topic. There are three things which have been incorporated here. One is cloud, the second is security, and the third is about storage. And the topic is myth and reality. When we talk about security, there are three things that we do talk about. One is the computer security, the third is the network security, and the second is network security, and the third is about information security. If all these things are taken into account, I think then only we can say that whatever information or data that we do have is secure in nature. The Cloud Security Alliance has talked about 9 things on the security part. I just wanted to illustrate and lay that background before I move to my speakers for their thoughts on the myths, realities. The first part that they talk about is a data breach. I think you would be knowing about data breach, and you would have read in a lot of newspapers and magazines about data breach happening in all sorts of companies, be it multinational, be it Indian companies, be it SME, be it middle. So all sorts of companies do have problems related to data breach. The second is the data loss. We would have all ever experienced data loss. We would have kept somewhere in our laptops or in servers, but we are not able to get those data whenever we need them. The third is the service traffic hijacking. This happens, the reason behind is somebody is going to hijack and get those data from the server or from the computers, and they are not being authorized to do so. The fourth one is insecure interfaces and APIs. The fifth is the denial of service, because we have either lost our password or we are not the right people or the right people not getting an access, the wrong people getting an access it also happens majority of the time. Then you have the malicious insider. So there are always, when the insider is malicious, you can expect the result which is in front of you. Cloud abuse, I think cloud computing has been moving fast with the kind of small base that they have started. Things are moving better because one need not need to pay on one go. It's basically deferred payment depending upon how you plan to move ahead. And the last two are the security threats to cloud computing and technology vulnerability. So if you see this, all the 9 things that I talked about, which is coming from Cloud Security Alliance, which has talked about is a notorious 9. Keeping that into background, and with the diverse background of speakers that we do have, I will open it out for my speakers to, we will have 2 rounds. One will focus on the myths and realities of, with respect to cloud as well as storage. And the second round, what we are planning to do is, we are planning to get whatever the industry experiences that they have got while implementing them in the respective verticals that they are working for, and then open it up for Q&A as we move forward. So I start with Neeraj, who is on my right-hand side, from Ace Data on cloud storage. So sir, if you can throw light on end-to-end security in the cloud, data storage, myth and reality.
Sorry. As Praveen mentioned, one of the about the cloud thing is the data loss. Today data has become the key to any individual, to any business. It's like in our this thing, we've started calling it as digital wealth. It's like saying without that data, even if you were on the move, without your hand phone which carries your address book or lots of application data today, one cannot survive if you lose that for a couple of hours even. So we at Ace Data have a practice wherein we help work with customers on protecting this data for a long-term disaster or for a potential disaster situation, providing backup as a service on the cloud. Now, as the topic of this discussion about myths and realities, one of the myths around cloud is that it's unsecure. The data is not, if it goes outside of the premise of an individual or a PC or something, there's a likelihood of losing it to something else. To this myth, if I was to really draw a comparative, if we go back a century behind, when banks started the locker facility, these lockers were even told, people were scared of keeping their valuables in those lockers, which today has become something which is a norm. So one feels more secure of keeping the valuables in terms of the jewelry or documents or anything in a bank locker rather than keeping at home, because it's more secure. And that same thing applies when it comes to a cloud-based data storage. When I say this, it means whenever a cloud provider like us gets into putting up a data for somebody, it involves the best of the equipments in the sense of providing the right security in terms of the premise, in terms of the equipment being utilized, and also making it secure by making it encrypted to the best form. So this is kind of a myth which says the data in the cloud is not secure. Today I would say a lot of individuals, leaving aside the large corporate or the enterprise customers, wherein they can afford to put that kind of investment by keeping it secure, it's very, very difficult to have the infrastructure which a cloud provider would have to provide security to that particular data.
Neeraj, you have been providing storage on the cloud. And I was seeing your list of customers. You have from all verticals, whether it is the telco, whether it is the telecom software companies, whether it is the automobile company, whether it is Hughes. So if you can talk about uh, how are you trying to demystify the myth in terms of cloud storage and how easy or difficult it is for you to convince them?
See, the kind of customers you named are certain companies whom we've been working for close to more than 10 years now. And they are matured companies who understood how the technology works. But to demystify on how we provide them with security is that, data today is available. When we back up our data from a client premise, it gets encrypted at rest only. So once you get the data encrypted, which is to the tune of 256-bit sort of an encryption, it kind of becomes difficult for somebody to hack into it. And then our technology brings in agentless sort of an architecture. So in a way, when we are backing up that particular data, it's not even being touched at the source itself. So being an agentless technology, so the data which we secure, which we protect, is completely secured and encrypted through the technology we use. And it goes from a handle to a database to so large organizations like, if you as you mentioned, so we help the likes of even NDTV, which is a broadcasting company, highly secure data. But then that's the technology we use provides complete security to those customers.
Thanks, Neeraj. Now I would come back to Ambrish. He comes from the business telephony and have been providing IVR on the cloud. Has got a very good list of customers, whether it is Medanta, Medicity, or Dr. Lal Path Labs, or Pepsi. So if you can throw light on the myths, realities, and
Sure. So yeah, so Nolarity really has two sets of customers. One is the small businesses, very, very small businesses. You're talking about a real estate broker, a logistics company, small IT services company. These kind of people end up using our hosted EPBX, a super receptionist product, as an office number. The second set is larger enterprises such as Pepsi, Coke, P&Gs, which use our hosted IVR as a telephony interface to their ERP system, so that you can book an order, you can get information from ERP systems just by making a phone call. Now, what really ended up happening? There were two things that when we started the business 4 years back come to us by investors and prospective customers. One was, of course, the security. So both small businesses and enterprises, their leads, phone calls, the phone call logs that they have that they receive on the office number, that all end up being on our servers. They're very, very worried about the leads. Like, what if somebody steals these leads and start calling and take away all the customer, and all the customer communication is also recorded, so they're very worried about that. And same with enterprises. You're connecting directly with the ERP system, very worried about security. But what we found was, if you can give them high quality encryption, high quality security, and if you can provide them very good cost, very good prices, and if you can provide them a flexibility of building up interesting solutions that can service their customer better, all those issues goes away. So really myth 4 years back, that lot of people talk with us, and we almost also were very concerned about, was that people would not want their customer data to be sitting on our servers, and people would not want to have all their customer communication routing through our servers. That we were able to take care of by providing flexibility, by providing right prices, and by really telling them about how, the banking example that was given, that how secure it is. It's probably far more secure on our server than it will be on your laptop if you're looking at the Excel sheet of the customers. So that really has been our experience. The second thing that we have found is that in India especially, the SMBs and enterprises, computing, people telling us that, computing you cannot, computer software, selling in computer software to small business is very, very difficult. That issue also we were able to really take care of by really linking the advantage of the computer software, which is hosted EPBX system that we sell to SMBs, by real business objective, by increasing their revenues or decreasing their costs. And as soon as you do that, even the most computer or software illiterate person is able to, understand the value and, make use of the software applications that we offer. So really those very, very pleasant discoveries that we made in the last 4 years have been able to use those to build up the company, build Knowlarity where we are. Thank you.
So what has been the experience in the last 4 years? Initially, it would have been a difficult task because a lot of openness would have been required in terms of putting all the data on your server, retrieving the data as and when it is required. And now, how are things? So if you can compare the two, the initial 3 years and the present 1 year of your 4-year experience in terms of running this company, and how easy or difficult for, because it's because you also talked about, Neeraj talked about the bank lock, and you also talk about the phone lock. So I think when we talk about security, we talk about the physical security, and then take that physical security into the cloud, and we cloud it, and we call it cloud security. So if you can highlight that part, I think it would be interesting for our audience out here. So.
No, sure. Really, I'll be talking more about the SMBs, more than 5,000 SMBs customer that we currently serve, who are considered a very, very difficult set of customers to sell any technology, really, because they really don't understand technology that much. What has happened in the last 3-4 years is that people are using Gmail and Yahoo webmails, and a lot of consumers are using Facebook and social media applications. Really, these are example of cloud applications. People are entrusting their very, very personal information, their pictures, their family history, their friends list, their address books on Facebook. People are entrusting all the business communication currently. If you look at Gmails and Yahoos, all the businesses in India have Gmails and Yahoos as their email provider. They're entrusting all these communications really with Gmails and Yahoo. And what has happened in the last 2-3 years, 4 years, is that people have become very comfortable with computing or your cloud computing technology. And as soon as we relate, we say, you're using Gmail and Yahoo and Facebook, and that is where you are letting go and storing all your business and personal information. You're totally comfortable. And they say, yeah, we are totally comfortable. We probably trust information stored on Gmail more than it's information stored on my laptop as far as security is concerned. I say it's the same thing. Your telephony record, which is sitting on your EPBX system versus sitting on our server, which is Gmail kind of security is applied. You should feel more comfortable, and then they can immediately relate and they feel comfortable. Really, that is what has changed in the last 4 years. This really very ubiquitous access to cloud computing at the consumer level in social media and email application that has been become very, very prevalent.
One more thing I wanted to ask from you is with the US snooping scandal that was brought by Mr. Snowden. So are companies in India asking you about how to tackle this issue, or they are just ignoring it?
So my comment really, this definitely really raises a point, right? As we go in international, for example, Australian customers ask for their data to be stored in Australia. The Middle Eastern customers, there are regulations which basically says that you have to keep the data locally in their own data centers. In India, it is less of a problem. Really, it's a very country specific, but definitely there is, for larger enterprises, there is this sensitivity around keeping the data in the same country. They're comfortable as long as it is in the same country, follows the same regulatory and a legal framework as they are living in. And that is where hybrid clouds starts kind of coming in, and that is what we have been implementing.
Thanks, Amrish, for laying the foundation. Now I turn to Ganesh, who is on my right. He's the co-founder of Prime Focus. Uh, uh, Prime Focus focuses on media ERP. They have a platform which is based on hybrid cloud, and I think they have the entire ecosystem as their customer, which is very good, right from broadcaster to studios to advertisers to sport bodies to news agencies. So, which is a good sign. This is a homegrown media ERP company, and that too hosted on a hybrid cloud. So he can throw more light on the myths and realities of how he was able to form this ERP and then finally sell it to the entire ecosystem as such. Over to Ganesh.
Thanks, Praveen. What we do at Prime Focus Technologies is really provide a cloud interface for everybody in the media ecosystem to collaborate and work together. This industry is very peculiar from a perspective that has been there for quite some time, just like banking, and till about 4 years back, it was all physical in nature. We used to have physical tapes that were created, and there was hardly any content in the digital forms. We took on a very big myth that everything I've done in-house, it just can't be done anywhere else. It has to be in a physical form, and it has to be with me. And we took on that myth, and much like other cloud platforms, turned around and said, do you have the technology today to deal with delivering to various platforms that need your content and do it in a very efficient way? That's really the reality that we brought to them. And what's interesting after 6 years is, I can talk of India, that barring Sony India, the rest of all of India's large broadcasters, it's the Star, Zee, Disney, Ma TV, the Cricket Board of India, Eros International, Yash Raj Studios, pretty much everybody is there on the same one technology platform. And this was a big challenge because they thought, how can two competitors, like almost like Pepsi and Coke, sharing their information on a single platform? And we are dealing here with content that the world hasn't seen. So it's been an interesting experience. Fortunately, the adoption curve has been much higher in India compared to the world. India and South Africa have probably been better markets, but we see that trend opening up globally. We also have customers like Bloomberg and MTV in London as part of our customers, and also Associated Press. And once they see that it's been working, and it's working for 3 years in a very competitive market in India, I think more and more people are accepting that a cloud platform like this is a better technology investment for them. So it's been good.
Ganesh, I wanted to know from you, it would not have been easy to move from tape to the digitized part of it. So if you can take us to the journey, and was it that it helped in easy archiving, or was it that it helped in only easy search? That's the reason they went for it, or they wanted to be slim and trim, so that's the reason they went for it, and how easy or difficult that exercise was, because we have been listening about majority of the broadcasters are now on the digitized platform. So if you can talk about that.
I think more than archiving, more than those are the easier problems to solve. I think what helped, there are a couple of things that helped. The tsunami in some sense helped because Sony had the largest plant in Japan where they produced about 80% of the HD cam tapes, and and 2 days after that, the factory went down, and there were no tapes in the market. So many factors that came into help, but those are very incidental. What customers, as you rightly said, what customers wanted was agility. If they had to go and put it in their own in-house, deciding which technology to buy and doing a proof of concept, getting it all would have been an 18 month exercise. And now you got not only delivered to an iPad app, you got to deliver to a Samsung app, you have to deliver into iTunes, you want to deliver into Netflix, Hulu. Yeah, you are dealing with multiple formats, multiple sizes, multiple extensions. No one customer could ever get all the infra and do it. So I think they said it's much easier dealing with you than dealing with our own IT stuff. So I think it's a lean and trim part than anything else.
Thanks, Ganesh, for that insight. Now we move to Steve Christian, who is the Vice President Marketing of Verimetrics. I think their whole business model depends upon content protection, and the big portion of that comes from digital rights management. So he's the right person, and with everything moving on cloud, I think they can throw more light on how they are using these technologies for their customers. And the other part of it is now with people moving from a single screen, that is a TV screen, to multiple screens, be it smartphone or be it tablet, for even the broadcast part of it. So how do you see the DRM part? Because in India, we do not have any DRM policy. So keeping that into view, how do you see the balance?
That's a lot of string of questions to try and get into a short afternoon. Let me start off by just taking the cue from our tagline. Actually, you talked about content protection. Many people would talk about our company, Verimetrics, as a CAS company, particularly in the Indian market, where we focus on cable digitalization. I try and characterize what we do as revenue security, and it's another sort of aspect of security, like you were talking about in introduction, but security of business models, or the ability to apply business models to media consumption. And that's what we are able to do, to take the data, the media that's been processed by Prime Focus, for instance, and be able to deliver it to end users, but deliver it in a form that provides a commercial proposition to customers, be that subscription or be that transactional in nature. And as you said, Pravin, the focus now is not just on a single mode of delivery, across a cable or across a satellite or something like that, but delivery across, yes, those older forms of RF technology, but also internet delivery. And the offering of a service really requires you to put a security envelope, a revenue security envelope around all networks across all devices. So that's the multi-screen kind of business in a nutshell. I was going to start to talk about a myth that I've come across, which is, that all forms of cloud implementation are appropriate. It's naturally better to do things in the cloud than not in the cloud. And our experience is that that there's often a trade-off that's made between a cloud implementation and a physical implementation based on moving data around. So if you have to move data around from the cloud to a physical piece of equipment, and in the broadcast world, sometimes that's a streamer, a modulator, or something like that, a satellite uplink or something. If you have to move data backs and forwards from the cloud to that kind of physical infrastructure, then it isn't necessarily the most economic way to handle the problem. And we often see, or becoming increasingly involved in projects where this physical infrastructure coexists with cloud infrastructure in order to provide elasticity of capacity. But the physical infrastructure is the fundamental kind of backbone of the solution. And it's the elasticity that provides the kind of value proposition that makes the most sense in these environments. And what I tend to think about cloud computing in its very basic, from us as a software vendor, really, is that very simplistically, you can get a lot of compute power without a lot of fan noise, and that's a very compelling proposition for people who have to build data centers and deploy equipment, especially when they need to be able to deploy equipment fast, right? So it's agility, as Ganesh said, right? Agility is key, so you can set up and tear down facilities relatively economically, and that means that you are able to manage change. And we're living in an industry that is really driven by change today. It's probably a good place to draw a line.
Steve, your entire business model, or the entire business model of broadcasters, will depend upon how many times people want to see on a particular, say, device. And with now multiple devices being at home, whether it is the TV or the smartphone or the tablet, and if digital rights management is being taken care of very properly, it's an additional revenue for the broadcaster. So what kind of DRM solutions that you do have, and keeping in view the security point of view, because if you are not able to tackle it very well, then it's a loss of revenue for the broadcasters. Yes. So if you can throw some light with respect to security and DRM, it would be great.
Okay. Yes, I'll try and, in a very short space of time, I'll try and encapsulate that. We don't focus ourselves on the terminology of CAS or the terminology of DRM, because, as I tried to put it, make the case for in my introduction, we're thinking about revenue security. So we apply security equally across a satellite network or an internet network. It's just that the nature of the physical wire is different, and the nature of the protocol that manages the client device is different. So, but fundamentally, you're running the same business, right? You're running the same business, whether it's internet-delivered content or satellite-delivered content. And that's the way that we approach it. You use the best available facilities, software and hardware, in the client device to secure the implementation and the decoding of video services, such that people who have effectively gained the rights to see a piece of programming can see it, and people who haven't gained those rights can't see it. That's very simplistically. And you either gain those rights through a purchase or a subscription or any kind of other mechanism. And as I say, increasingly people want to be able to see content irrespective of the delivery channel. We supply the technology that enables you to run a service irrespective of the delivery channel. I think that's where the industry is going. Is that fair enough?
Thanks, Steve. We have Sanjeev, who is Managing Director of Albion Infotel. He is the only system integrator here, and he also focuses on infrastructure as a service and remote infrastructure management, where you definitely require a lot of security. So Sanjeev, if we can throw some light on the myth and realities part.
Thank you, Praveen. You have given me the last one to speak, so most of the points have been already touched by the other speaker and the panelists who are sitting here, but I would just like to talk about two things, maybe more, though there could be a lot of technical things which most of it have been already touched. That One is that I would give you a little brief of my organization, what we do, how we do, and the second is that I would like to talk a little bit more on the customer standpoint when we come to the adoption of cloud services or things like that. So as the subject of this event is end-to-end security on the cloud and data storage, myth or reality, we have been talking on cloud per se from almost now past 7 years, and there have been a lot of event nationally or internationally has happened. And I think by now we have come to a situation where whether we see in the SME space or in the large enterprise or in the consumer, the lot of adoption is happening on the cloud. The people who have been conventionally thinking that it is not a reality, or we don't know where the data is going to, or whether it is secure or not, or whether it is how the data is being kept, whether it is mixed. I mean, the competitor data is also mixed with our data, whether the cloud service provider may share our data with our competitors, and all those questions by and large have been addressed, and that is how the adoption is happening very fast in the cloud. Per se, if I tell a little bit about my organization, is that we are about 18 years old organization and grown like a system integration typical in India. And about 5 years back, we started working on the cloud platform and on the managed service remote infrastructure management. And we hosted our platform almost about 2.5, 3 years back. And today, on our cloud platform, we have some business applications for the SMEs, and we have applications for the consumer. So especially when I talk about consumer, the adoption in past 1.5 years has happened. Alone from US, we have almost about 75,000 customers on our platform coming on. And from the SME space, we have about 250 customers who have come and subscribed various applications and storage applications and other business applications, etc. Now, if I talk a little bit from the customer side, that what are the points as a customer you should have in your mind when you go and subscribe any service from any cloud service provider, is that one, you must see that what kind of a SLA, the cloud service provider is giving you, whether it meets to your requirement or not. And when I call it your requirement, then obviously that you may be into any kind of a business, and that you would have back-to-back SLA with your customer, and you have to see that whether my service provider whom I am going to give my applications or I am going to subscribe meet that requirement or do not meet that requirement. Second thing, what you have to see, that what is going to happen when you decide to move from the one cloud service provider to the other cloud service provider, how the data is going to move, how things are going to work. It should not happen that going on to any cloud service provider and subscribing their application or services and mapping your process on their application is far easier than moving out from there and moving to the next cloud service provider, and that is the time you have to see that how you have to move. So those questions should be raised even before when you move to any cloud service provider, and you should have a very clear answer that how the data is going to come back to you, how you are going to move on to it. And then government also should have some kind of a role in it, that there should be how the interoperability of the cloud service will work. What should be the standard platform on which the cloud service provider should come, so that the data of the customer goes very, very smoothly, and the business of any customer should not suffer. Advantage to the customer on the cloud in the various event, everybody has talked, but maybe I can just spend a minute on it, that obviously, supposing you are in a field of anything like manufacturing any automobile part, so your business is how to do more and more innovation in making those parts and not into IT and ITES services. So I think it definitely will be a good decision to leave the IT on those people who understand the IT much better, or who have been consistently have been investing into the IT on the security side or from the application innovation side, and you as a customer concentrate and do your, which is a very important part of your business, a very capital which you have, invest on the innovation of your side of business, and rather than IT. And IT investment is being done by the cloud service provider, whether on the infrastructure or on the security or on the storage or on the network and everything. And of course, when these CSPs who are sitting in the background, I mean, when they are taking care and signed the SLA with you by 99.5 or 99.9, whatsoever, everybody has its own SLA, your efficiency increases, because then you have whole time to concentrate on your own business rather than managing IT. So, I mean, since I would like to finish it at this point of time over here. Maybe Praveen has any question I can answer, or I can take the question and answer in the Q&A session. But so.
Sanjeev, we wanted to understand from you. You said that you have more US customers and less of SME customers. So,
yeah.
So how easy or difficult it was to get those customers, and that too managing the remote infrastructure would not have been easy. So keeping in view the security point of view, where Indian companies are not so comfortable offloading their data.
Yeah, so as a company, as a cloud service provider, or as any company, when you are in a business, that you have to always see that how you survive first, and then you decide which way to move into the market and see where the early or fast adoption can happen. Because when the cloud services started, there have been a lot of questions, or there have been a lot of doubts whether it is going to work, and if it is going to work, then how it is going to work, and I mean how the data is going to be. And then we decided, when we hosted our platform almost about 3 years back, that SME and the large enterprises are going to be little tough to adopt it. So though we had application and the solutions for them, and we thought, I think it will be a good strategy that we start from the consumer, because the consumer can have a early adoption, and so that the revenue start coming in the company, and then we also survive with it and then move ahead in our business. So we started from the consumer side, and then within a period of about 1.5 or maybe 2 years, almost about 75,000 consumer customers are in our platform, and about 250 from the SME side, because SME has their lot of concern, and which is very right. I am not saying that it is wrong. They have a lot of concerns in terms of that, how they have to service their client, what are kind of SLA, then the data operability, as one of the panelists has shared, that in every country you have to see that what is their local law says, that can you transport the data out of country, or the data you have to keep it there. And then also you have to work from the side of what happens in case when the disaster occurs in your side, how you are going to meet the SLA. Do you have that kind of systems and process and the technology, or the available in their geography or globally? So all those things are the major concern for any SME for the adoption, of the large enterprise for the adoption of cloud technology. So in comparison, when you compare the adoption from the consumer side, or when you look at the adoption from the large enterprise SME side, the easy is from the consumer side. So we thought to move in from that side. So that's how it has been. Praveen.
Thanks, Sanjeev. We move to the second round, which is the best practices part, and I will start with you being the last speaker for the first round. So if you can throw light on best practices for security in the cloud, or cloud security. So what are the best practices, both from SME or from international companies who are your customers?
Praveen, let me give you a little bit my background, that I per se run the organization. So I am an entrepreneur, not a hardcore technology person. If my CTO would have been here, would have been give you more insight of how to really secure from the security side. But then on a very high level, there are a few things which I would like to really highlight, is that you have to really see that when it is all about the security of data, because the application and the infrastructure is being set by the cloud services, but nevertheless you have to still find out that what sort of application layer security they are putting up, even when the data is moving within the application from one side, one table to the other table, or one side to the other side. Then the network, what kind of network security they are putting, whether it is, encrypted, not encrypted, even if it is encrypted, at what level of encryption they are providing it. You have to also see that your data, when they are putting in their data center, how they are putting it. They are putting the data all together for all the customer, or there's a different compartment. Those kind of technology they have used, whether the data can be kept separately for you or not. You have to also see that even the cloud service provider, their engineer, because after all there is a human working on the background, even at the cloud service provider place, you have to see whether do they have any of their engineers who are sitting in the background, do they have any kind of access to your data. Because if you go, like we are on Delhi, even if you go to place like Nehru Place, you might get a CD where all the subscriber of Airtel, their contact detail you can buy at 100 rupees CD, right? So you have to be very, very sure that even at the back side of the CSP, what kind of technology they're providing, do their internal people have the access of your data or not? So those kind of at a high level, can be the question from your side while you go for the adoption to the cloud services to any of the CSP.
Thanks, Sanjeev. I come to Steve. You would have a lot of international experiences on, say, security in the cloud. So if you can dwell on some of the best practices out of it.
Sure. Well, I'm going to characterize our experience as security in general, and then the same kind of approach applied to the cloud, right? So, we're protecting a media business, and the key issues there, or the critical issues there, are protection of the media itself, which is usually stored and transmitted in an encrypted form, and then separate, distinct protection of the keys. In other words, the keys to that media that enable you to be able to play it back, right? And so, so we have a set of practices about how you secure, should we say, the repository of the data, the incoming media, and storage in encrypted form and things like that, and then separate practices about how we secure the keys and the transmission of those keys to the client device types. I'm talking at a very high level here, right? So those are our kind of approaches which would apply in a physical data center or a physical head end, and apply equally in cloud implementations, with probably one little wrinkle, right? I characterized our more typical deployment scenarios now as being ones where there's a mix of physical resources and cloud resources to give elasticity. And I think the key issues there, without being a security specialist myself either, but the key issues there are to do with making sure the physical and cloud environment are secured in symmetrical ways, so that you can move data backwards and forwards between those two environments to provide elasticity without incurring additional exposure. And I think the typical terminology for this kind of approach is a virtual private cloud. So it's a kind of a virtual extension of your data center or your head end, and then protecting the edges of that in order to provide some of the other aspects of security, denial of service protection and things like that, in the method with which we communicate with the client devices. So that's probably the very hand-wavy kind of approach. It needs an architecture diagram of several hours to discuss more fully, but that's the way that we kind of philosophically approach deployment of our technology in operators around the world.
Brought things very well, where you talked about cloud and physical infrastructure, and they all coming in a symmetrical way. Now I would invite Mr. Ganesh Sankaran. So if he can talk about the best practices.
I think fundamentally, dealing with media, we are more bothered with leakage of content and ensuring that it's as it passes through the system, we have enough checks and balances to make sure that if at all it leaks, there are mechanisms to stop it. I don't think in terms of any one best practice that's recommended. It's an evolving subject that transfers across network data movement. Fundamentally, if the workflows and the automation can ensure that you have bells and whistles to at least alert if there is a leak of security, I think that's probably the best that you could do. And this is a continuous journey that you keep strengthening.
Can I ask a question, just a follow-up question?
Sure.
One of the technologies that we apply to delivery of media to client devices and things like that is a watermarking technology,
Sure.
a forensic watermarking. I was wondering if anything like that is a prevalent practice in your part of the business.
I think Civolution is what we use. And that's probably the only one that we have from day one, and ever since Phillips and Thompson went out of business.
We have to talk.
We have to talk. But yeah, it's prevalent within what we do. Yeah.
Ambrish, if you can talk about some of the best practices.
No, I think the most are already really covered, but given that we are more SMB focused, which almost end up being really prosumers, really you can have all the checks and balances. You can make sure that data is kept in various places, different places, so that one customer's data is not accessible by mistake to another. But really, it really comes down to user management and giving visibility of the access of the data really to the end customer. So one SMB customer is knowing when all his leads were downloaded, for example, and which login password was used to, which login was used to download it. If you give that kind of visibility, which Gmail also does lately, it tells you when was the last login done on your account. So that kind of visibility giving to end users, so there is some kind of self-management or self-monitoring happening. And then you have all the regular way of making sure data is segregated, data is properly managed, the right users are accessing the data, and the employees who are in the back end do not have access to data because it's all encrypted.
Thanks, Neeraj. We have Ambrish, if you can talk about. Sorry, Neeraj, if you can.
That's okay. Most of the things, actually my fellow panelists have covered, like encryption and how you secure data, multiple copies. One of the things which we've noticed, and most working with lot of large organizations, is that the biggest security threat is from the insider in any of the organizations. And where we've seen companies fail is keeping the right policy around the encryption key management. Once everything else is in order, but it turns out that those keys are available. It's like you have the best of the locks available, and then give the keys to anybody who comes. So the policy around how you manage those keys and how those are circulated within the organization should ensure that the information access is only available to people who have, and people who are managing the infrastructure, or people who are managing the network should not have access to those encryption keys. That makes life much easier for securing the rest of the stuff.
Thanks, Neeraj. I now open the floor for any Q&A that you do have. Mics, please. Please introduce yourself and be brief.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I wanted to ask Neeraj about, as you are,
Are you from?
I am from Indiables Technologies. We are a service integrator for, cloud solutions. I wanted to ask, a simple question that, how important is the physical security of the data centers, when it comes to cloud? I mean,
So could you please elaborate on when you say physical security?
so the data centers, how physically you try to secure it.
Like the entry and the exit.
Uh,
People who
No, that becomes very important. So physical security is the first place, where you're actually keeping that whole data center is become very, very important. So that's where the kind of tiering of data center comes into place. So if you don't have the physical security of that data center, then anyways it's highly vulnerable. So that is key to the whole practice.
Let me add here, because see, that is the first step. So if you are able to prevent that, because in terms of physical security, you are allowing the intruders to go into the data center. So if you do not have a RFID card or any sort of these mechanisms, you are opening the data center for vulnerability. And when you are opening it up, then you can imagine the disaster which can happen. So these are what we can say the initial blocks which needs to be restricted or protected at the same time. Any other questions that you do have, please feel free to ask. No other questions from the crowd? I think they have all understood. Or have not understood. So thank you all for listening us patiently, and I would like to thank all my speakers here. Neeraj Mediratta from Ace Data, Amrish Gupta from Nolarity Communications, Ganesh Sankaran from Prime Focus Technologies, Steve Christian from Verimatrix, and Sanjeev Gupta from Albion Infotel. And I would like to thank Exhibitions India for giving us an opportunity to speak to you in front of all of you. Thanks. We have some mementos for the speakers, so I think we will complete.
May I request
on
the
time.
chairperson? May I request the chairperson, Mr. Praveen Prashant, to give out mementos to the speakers? Mr. Neeraj? Mr. Ambarish? Mr. Ganesh? Mr. Steve? Mr. Sanjeev Gupta? No. And on behalf of Exhibitions India, we have a memento for a chairperson. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Praveen. Well, yes, I think that will be better. And we can take a group photo. If you all stand, it will be a nice group photo for everybody. Come. Thank you, gentlemen. We come to a close to this session. We reassemble here tomorrow at 10 o'clock when the session starts once again.